Right, so for everyone who has viewed the complaints that the left have been making, that the left have been victims of a purge conducted by Keir Starmer since he became Labour leader, now that it is happening to parliamentary candidates and even long-standing Labour MPs themselves, all of a sudden the more people, and certainly the mainstream media, are sitting up and taking notice of just how despotic things have actually become in the Labour Party, whilst they've been giving Keir Starmer a free pass for the last 4 years. But if you think this is just another video about Diane Abbott, then you're wrong, because clearly she was just the first. Yesterday evening, and in a last-minute change on Newsnight, presumably in order to get her on, Faiza Shaheen spoke of how she had now been dismissed as a Labour parliamentary candidate. She was the woman who almost beat Iain Duncan Smith in 2019, despite how bad that election went for Labour in the end, on similar spurious charges as so many others in the party have been dismissed from the party over, making a mockery that it is all about electability. And as another woman of colour told she isn't wanted, the racism Starmer is presiding over in the Labour Party has clearly been dialed up to 9 now, and things haven't stopped there, because there's more people in the pipeline ready to be purged, or who have already been pushed out themselves. And who knows who else is going to be axed in the coming days before the cut-off for nominations is announced.
You got an email tonight. When?
Just like an hour ago.
Saying...
So basically, suddenly I'm I'm out campaigning and my phone's blowing up. They've briefed the press. They briefed the press before they even had the decency to call me and talk to me. There was a meeting yesterday. My baby cried through half of it, so I don't know how they came to a decision because I couldn't even hear their questions. 14 tweets since 2014, 10 years. 3 of those were like about the Green Party, me liking my friend's tweet before I joined the Labour Party. And one of them was about my experiences of Islamophobia in the party. Like, how am I not allowed to talk about my experiences of Islamophobia and the double standards that I've seen and that we see with Diane Abbott, for instance? I honestly, I'm just so shocked right now to be treated this badly after being such an active member of the party. And, we were one of the tiny number, 6 Tory-held seats in 2019 that had to swing to Labour. To act like I am some kind of person that can't, that isn't good at elections, that frustrates the Labour's purpose.
Right, so that was Faiza Shaheen talking to Victoria Derbyshire on last night's Newsnight about how she had only been informed literally an hour before she went on that show, via email no less, to tell us she was no longer the Labour parliamentary candidate for Chingford and Wood Green. She'd literally been out campaigning all day, baby strapped to her as she was knocking on doors, just as she has been for the last 4 years now, and all the while the media were already being briefed that she'd been dropped as Labour's candidate, which is just plain nasty. And on the basis of 14 tweets since 2014, so that's 14 tweets over 10 years, some since before she was even a Labour member herself, so the thought police strike again. Nothing prior to the time of being a Labour member is relevant to the party at all, in my view, unless it is particularly extremist. And Faiza is a soft left, I would say. Certainly nothing of the sort of the sort of right-wing and extremist end of politics. And of course, she said much of what they were about there to Victoria Derbyshire. 3 tweets about the Green Party. I'm guessing everyone who has left Labour in disgust and gone to the Green Party now, such as myself, would never ever be welcomed back into Labour ever again. It would be held against us, wouldn't it, surely? Not that I imagine any of us who have done that and who have left are looking at ever going back to Labour the way things stand. But such is the stupid logic here, for lack of a better word, of Starmer's Labour. She even had a tweet about her own experiences of Islamophobia within the party used against her. And I can only speculate of the perverse thinking behind that, and that is that Labour don't acknowledge Islamophobia as either being present, the attitude many now in positions of influence accused Corbyn over of anti-Semitism, or feel that by bringing up such racist attitudes used against her, that she is now directly attacking the Labour Party and harming its reputation therefore. in which case the Labour Party is every inch the racist and foul endeavour that Starmer's predecessor was accused of presiding over. There is zero logic to using somebody's experience of racism against them. That can only be racist itself, no ifs or buts. If Labour wanted to be that anti-racist party it keeps claiming to be, then people experiencing it even now, because it is an all-pervading societal ill, you can never truly rid yourselves of, just deal with every time it arises, then people need to be free to talk about it, not be punished for doing so, as clearly is happening here. British journalist and Zetio frontman Mehdi Hassan highlighted another of the tweets Shaheen had apparently been punished for, which was retweeting a sketch by American comedian Jon Stewart, himself Jewish, sending himself up as being the wrong kind of Jew for being critical of Israel. So now Israel can't be criticised if you want to be a Labour candidate. That pretty much nails on their colours, doesn't it? Is the party now being run by a bunch of pound-shop Netanyahus now then? Stewart actually acknowledged Mehdi Hassan's tweet in relation to Faiza Shaheen himself, saying, "This is the dumbest thing the UK has done since electing Boris Johnson." I certainly don't argue with that assessment at all, especially if you consider electability as one of the factors here. Shaheen was on course to beat Iain Duncan Smith this time around, Dr. Death himself. Yet now he may well end up holding on to his seat, and if he does, then that will all be on Keir Starmer. Pollingreport.uk put out their prediction for this seat yesterday, putting Faiza Shaheen on 56% with Duncan Smith on 28%. Well, the condemnation has been scorching on social media, as you can imagine it would be. The Labour Muslim Network are incensed. They've said the deselection of Faiza Shaheen is unacceptable. To use her tweets accounting personal experiences of Islamophobia as evidence for deselection is utterly outrageous. Telling a Muslim woman she is not allowed to talk about her own experiences of racism is clear Islamophobia. Absolutely right. Of course it obviously is. Women's rights activist and lawyer Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu referenced Jon Stewart's sketch as well, saying, Keir Starmer just kicked Faiza Shaheen out of the Labour Party because Jewish Labour movement complained she liked to tweet about a Jon Stewart sketch. They're offended by a line mobilised by professional organisations because it plays into a trope. It's not a trope when it's fact, and Jewish Labour movement just proved it by mobilising to get Faiza kicked out. Make it make sense. So the Jewish Labour movement were behind that complaint, were they? The same body chaired by Mike Katz, who just the other day happened to share a platform with anti-Muslim journalist Melanie Phillips. That faction, JLM, belongs nowhere near any position of authority on meting out rulings relating to racism. They were inadequate before, not my claim, the claim made by Martin Ford in his Ford report into Labour abuses and racism, but now they appear to have been behind moves to remove a candidate who has themselves experienced racism. But that doesn't appear to matter because it appears to be the wrong sort of racism, because she dared invoke what they refer to as a trope, anti-Semitism again, which, as Dr. Shola points out, only stands if it isn't true, and it is. Labour's hierarchy of racism demonstrated yet again, but this time by their own anti-racism appointees. Diane Abbott, now Faiza Shaheen, both women of colour. Will white men get their spots now? Will they get their seats? Will both of these candidates now run as independents? I truly hope so. But it doesn't even end there. Having failed to deselect her previously, it seems another deselection attempt is now potentially in the offing against Poplar and Limehouse MP Apsana Begum. Oh, what a surprise! It's another woman of colour. Begum's treatment by Labour is a litany of abuse, whereby the local Labour Party had been in the control of her abusive ex-husband, and a deselection attempt he triggered later got overturned, and he is subsequently, I understand, as far as I'm aware, being thrown out of the party now. But Apsana Begum is a domestic violence survivor. She was suspended on the basis she was alleged to have committed housing benefit fraud, again an accusation triggered by her ex. She ended up hospitalised as the strain became too much for her to bear. The fight she was having to have with her own party, having no support at all from her party, led by Starmer. But she's come out the other side of that. And now she looks set to go through it all again. In fact, Starmer's faction were actually so disappointed when she was cleared of the fraud charges, they were all set to expel her on the spot outside the courthouse. They were outside waiting. Because it's all about factional control. And now Michael Crick's Tomorrow's MP's account has put out a tweet saying Begum could be about to face another deselection attempt. Quote tweeting a letter from Poplar and Limehouse CLP to the Labour National Executive Committee, urging them to back her reselection, which evidently still hasn't happened, despite her being the incumbent MP. It's little wonder there are people fearing for civil liberties now in the face of a Starmer-led Labour government. Looking at this level of draconian authoritarianism being meted out in the party and how that would be reflected across the country should Starmer win a majority, it is little wonder people are now considering not tactical voting, but splitting the vote actively as an option to deny Labour that majority. Such is the importance of such a move that it is now being seen by more and more people that this is a man who has got to be stopped. Another casualty of this Starmer purge, and for a change this is a white man, but nonetheless seen as someone on the left, is Lloyd Russell Moyle, who has now received an administrative suspension from Labour as of yesterday, based on comments he allegedly made 8 years ago, the timing of which, with Parliament being dissolved today, now means he can't stand to defend his seat of Kempstown and Peacehaven. The details of the complaint aren't known, but the timing of it is just as convenient as it can possibly get. And of course, Diane Abbott and what she will do next is still a topic of conversation going on now. A rally held for her last night was attended by massive crowds. She spoke to great adulation. But the double standards on show here against Abbott and Shaheen stood against white men doing far worse but getting little more than a slap on the wrist shows not only rampant racism, but massive double standards in the Labour Party under Starmer as well, as this video recommendation exposes all about. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.